Hi, and welcome to the Markeisha Hall podcast. I'm your host, Markeisha Hall, IEP coach, parent empowerment partner, and certified autism travel professional. Today, we get to talk to a former coworker of mine. Let's get into it. Lorenzo! I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Yeah, he made it. Wow. Hi, guys. I'm Lorenzo Loson. I'm a school psychologist for the Capistrano Unified School District. And Markeisha and I go way back. We worked together. She held me under her wings and introduced me into the world of special education when I was her instructional aide in her moderate severe, right? Cool class. Good times, too. We had a lot of fun.
And he also loves glitter.
Man.
He loved being on the glitter project.
I love glitter, and I was the best at snack time with the kids. I really enjoyed that.
You really did. I've came across a picture of snack time, actually.
Oh, man. That and ABC Mouse with those kiddos. I loved it.
I still use that.
Good. Absolutely.
I think you changed your first, I think we taught you how to change a diaper there, too.
Oh, yeah. I became the official diaper changer of the classroom as well. That was a role that I grew to love. I grew to love that role.
Well, I am so glad that you came on and to see you. And well, we see each other on social media all the time, but I have 500 children. So my time is not my own, but I'm thank God for social media. Get to see what all the peeps are doing. You had a very awesome connection with the kids. Also, all the kids loved you. Even all the kids in the other classrooms loved you. My personal kids loved you.
Yeah, I love them. Now they're grown-ups now. Like they're taller than me. They're gonna helping me out when I retire. When I'm in my old age, they're gonna give it back to me, and I appreciate that. I already look forward to that help that I'll get.
They always talk about I wonder what happened to Lorenzo. Like, where'd he go? Well, he works.
He's working.
An adult. He works.
An adult.
Yeah.
He'll be there soon.
He saw you as friends, so they were wondering whatever happened to him.
They're so sweet.
So I always appreciate it. I learned a lot from you, also because you did always have such an awesome relationship with the kids and with the parents, and I'm so happy to see that you actually, while we were in class together, you were working on what you're doing now.
Right. Yeah. While I was in the classroom, I was working on my master's in school psychology, and it paid off. It worked out. And here I am now.
There you are now. So a lot of our listeners are new to the IEP process, and we were could have had a whole podcast because we were just chit-chatting. We always did have good conversations about they're just getting into this special education process. And what I want to do is demystify some of the roles. So I'm trying to bring everyone that's in the different roles of the IEP team so they can see that there's people behind those roles and explain like what kind of your role would be at the IEP process. And then we'll talk about how to build relationships more so we don't have to have this so the focus can be on the kids and we know that we're all working together for the kids. So
right.
What is your role in IEP?
My role as a school psychologist is I'm considered the expert in the area of the different eligibilities that a student can meet to receive special education services. Now, it can be one, it can be two, multiple, it doesn't matter. As long as in some way, not only do they meet the eligibility, and I think this might be one of the biggest points to make, especially for the new parents, because your child has, let's say they have a medical diagnosis of something, that does not automatically mean they're going to meet eligibility for any kind of special education services.
Right.
In my world, when people see the word psychologist in my title, I know it can be intimidating and I know it like freaks people out. For me, I'm not the kind of psychologist where I have a doctorate. I can prescribe medication. I can do all, no. That's a different kind. I'm school-based. So my job is, do you meet eligibilities? 1, and 2, is there an academic impact on your performance in the classroom? So if you have a simple one, you have ADHD, and it's gotten to the point that the ADHD is so bad, it's really hard for your student to pay attention, whether they're on medication or not. That attention deficit is affecting them academically. Where they would meet that eligibility under what's called other health impairment.
Okay.
Diagnosis and then that academic impact. But I've had plenty of students that have medical diagnoses of either autism, ADHD, something with attention, but they don't meet it because there's not that academic impact that's happening.
Right.
It doesn't mean that it can't happen in the future, especially with our younger kiddos. Just because we meet one eligibility, that doesn't mean that we're not going to look at it again in the future if it comes up again as a concern for a parent. So my job is to look at any and all suspected disabilities where we feel like there's something going on that's affecting the student academically. My job is to look into that and try to get through those weeds and find out what's there, what's not there, and most importantly, how can we help this student?
Right. Now, that is super important that you said that, because a lot of people get confused or upset even, really, because they feel like if they have a medical diagnosis, then that automatically qualifies them for special education, and it doesn't. So there is that that difference, because it has to affect them educationally.
Right.
That's a big myth that's out there that you just.
I'm trying to be a myth buster.
So what another thing I feel that we were kind of discussing before is that you're a psychologist, so that can be intimidating to you're reading their mind, right?
Yeah, I'm constantly assessing people. Yes. I'm not.
We were talking about how everyone kind of has titles around the table and how that can be intimidating, how you might be reading on the report and it might say something. I'll go with something like Joe says, auditory processing. And I'm like, I don't know what that means, but I don't want this team of professionals to know that I don't know what it means. So I'm just shaking my head and saying,
right.
And we don't
do that.
Yeah, we don't want to do that.
You do not do that. Ask. Do not be afraid to ask, because it's something you and I were talking about off air. You know, we tell our kids there's no such thing as it's a dumb question, a stupid question. That's the same for anybody with any question that they had, especially if it's your first time coming into the IEP world. It's initial, and this is your first time that you're having your student assessed because you think that there's something going on. You need to be asking these questions.
Right.
Don't bite your head off. No one's going to react negatively. We're there because we want to make sure we're explaining the information and that you're understanding what it is that we looked into with your student.
Right.
For me, as a school psychologist, if I'm not having parents, especially at an initial, because once you start getting into the 3-year reviews, you know, and around the block, so to speak, so you kind of like, okay, nothing's really changed. Like, it's all the same. You've heard the same things, multiple meetings, so you know how it works. But if it's your first time at a meeting, we're all going through our reports and you're not really asking any questions, myself personally, I'm worried. As a school psychologist, I'm worried because I think that it's either I answered your question, but you're not getting it. You're not getting it, and that's why you're not asking questions.
Right.
Or you're afraid to ask questions. Do not be afraid to ask questions, because if you don't, then later on it can get into the whole like, well, you know, you didn't explain that until like I did. Remember, that's why I said, you know, I don't have any questions. And the other thing to keep in mind is that, you know, we take notes on all the meetings that we have, and we always read back the notes of everything that was said, you know, the cliff notes. We're not going to sit there and read word for word. We summarize everything that was talked about to make sure that we captured everything, both comments, questions, concerns, results. We captured everything in that meeting. And so if we're not asking those questions, then, you know, we can look back and say, well, we addressed it, but you didn't ask, or you said that you didn't have any questions. So we want to make sure we're all on the same page. At the end of the day, we want to be on the same page because we're all a team that's trying to make this student successful.
Right. And so we were thinking about team. I think there's a reason why it's that is just in football. So I'll use a football analogy. Everyone has their, their position to play. And if you're not, in the huddle, and you're not saying, you don't understand the play, they throw you the ball, then you don't get the touchdown.
You have no idea what to do. You might run the wrong way.
Right.
You're going to run the wrong way. It's like, no.
So we don't want that. We want it to be, there's a lot of stuff about IEPs and special education out there. And I think we lived in our little bubble in our in our classrooms because it was not typical, but I would say that just came from relationships. And that's why I'm hoping that with these podcasts, I think we're like, oh, Lorenzo, he's a psychologist. He was a person behind there. He wasn't just the papers. And maybe my child psychologist would also be willing to, answer the questions outside of, to answer my questions. Like just being a person behind the title, I think is super important. And so that's what I'm glad that you were able to come on and talk about all those scary tests. Cause really those tests are really scary. I have to say as a parent, I'm going to flip between sides. I was on the professional side. I get that, but I'm going to tell you that I know what those tests were. I was set in tons of meetings, but receiving that as a mom on the other side, I literally have talked about this before, had to step away. I got really emotional about it, because I was like, they don't know what my baby can. They don't know what he can do. And I understand professionally that, we have to know it's not that it seems deficit driven, but we have to know where the starting point is in order to be like, where can we help them? We can't just be like, everything's flowers and roses,
Right.
That professionally. But I'm telling you, as a mom, to hear like we couldn't even score this one because we weren't able to score it because that's how low it was. It's hard.
It's not easy. And trust me, like me as a school psychologist being in that situation too, I do feel for the student because most of the time it's the first time that they're meeting me. And I'm telling them, hey, we're going to be doing testing. Right? Like everyone gets nervous with that word. Everyone, when they hear they're going to be tested, doesn't even matter if you studied for it. You're still going to get nervous. You're still going to freak out a little bit. And so there's absolutely nothing wrong with, having those emotions involved because I don't blame you. I really don't blame you. One thing that I would want your listeners to understand as well, and you made a really good point, how it sounds like it's deficit driven.
Right.
It's really not, right? Because like you said, we're trying to just come up with a baseline. We're trying to weed out, we're trying to separate the strengths from the weaknesses. That's really what my testing is going to show. Because my testing, all the tests that I use, if there is a learning disability, if there is a difficulty in one of the 7 different areas of learning, the tests that I use are designed to find it.
Okay.
Meaning that if it's really there, the student will have a hard time with it. I mean, they're going to try their best, but it's going to be hard for them. And it's not like there's just one test that I can give, because what I like to do as a school psychologist is, if I'm not just looking at the test result, I'm also looking at that testing behavior that I have with the student. So if I'm kind of seeing the students maybe a little distracted, the student's nervous, the student's not taking it that serious, I call in the student again on a different day. Now that we have that relationship built up, and I will do a different test to measure that same area that I wasn't comfortable with the first score, because I'm not sure that they were giving me 110% like I would want them to.
Right.
And so it really is just that collaborative team effort where even the student, whether they realize it or not, they're part of the team and they're putting in just as much as the rest of us are to see, okay, where do we need to help you, if we need to help you at all. Right. If we don't need to help you, it's like, sorry, we did a lot of testing, but hey, like you don't need it. So that's great. Right. You have to figure out, okay, so why is the student, still doing well in certain areas? Why do we still have these concerns? But for the most part, we want it to work out. We just want to make sure that we target all the areas we need to target. But yeah, you made a really good point, because it is emotional. It really is, especially for the first time. It does feel like you're telling me everything that my student can't do,
Right.
I'm letting you know what your student can do, but I've also found areas that we know are going to be difficult for your student.
Right.
Where we can give that support to help them be more successful.
I like the way that you explained that. I'm going to definitely be pulling that out and putting it on a quote somewhere.
Absolutely.
It was a good analogy. I mean, I fluctuate between the both. So, but that makes it seems like everyone would be able to understand that, because it is in the circles, in the parent circles, that is just deficit, based. And I like the way they explain, like, we have to know, you have to know where they are, even though it feels and it sounds terrible. And these are the areas that they, in the classroom setting, that they will be struggling with. So we need to identify those so that we can say, okay, maybe they need this, and that. It doesn't feel that way though.
No. I definitely, and I think it depends on the person, right? It depends on each school psychologist and what their presentation style is. But, I mean, you have to be sensitive to it too, because it is sensitive information. And some people are just like, oh yeah, I see that. And other people, it's like, their heart just sunk because they had no idea that so many different things going on. So it doesn't matter what the eligibility is. You have to be sensitive to it. And you just have to understand that at the end of the day, we're all in it for the same reason. We're all people. We all have emotions. We all have feelings. We have to be sensitive to that as well. And I think that's the other side of the communication bubble, or that key to communicating with your team, is being sensitive to everyone's differences and what everyone brings to the table.
Yeah. And I think being able to, like you said, communicate be the number one word. Is that if you were feeling like that as a parent, to be able to say, this is a team, I need a minute to step back, or could you explain that to me more? I feel like there's not enough questions at the IEP, even when I used to run them initially. But then I taught my parents to ask questions. That it should be questions, because then not only are you learning more as the parent, like I said, using my own example as the auditory visual processing, I had no clue. Then I start to, I think parents feel guilty too, because you're like, why didn't I pick this up? Like, well, because you're not a psychologist. And I'm saying that to myself, not to anybody else. But I was like, I'm in special education. When that test came back, I literally was really floored. I was like, hey, what does it mean? Audio, he can't see this whole time. I really, was having some mom guilt. And then I smacked myself around, or Dre kicked me up under the table. I'm not sure. But I got to bring myself back and be like, okay, it's not about me. I need to find out more about this. And so I asked questions. But I think that parents get stuck, maybe like with the guilt, like, somebody else has brought up this to me and I've been living with them every day. I didn't notice these things. But I wanted to know, that you went to school forever, right?
Right. Yeah.
To look for these types of things.
Exactly. And that's the thing. You make a great point that, there's so many other things you have to take into consideration, not just that you guys live together, but it's the environment's completely different. And that's one thing that we always try to explain to the parents is, the structure, the educational structure that we try to instill in the classroom is going to be different from home. It just is. And so it shouldn't be surprising, if you don't see anything going on at home, but then at school, we're like, well, this is a little tough for him or her, or we're seeing these behaviors when we're trying to transition to this activity. There's a different structure. And so they're starting to get that routine. And that's just something that we communicate and we learn to work together with, right? Just to help the student also, because especially the little ones, they're still developing their language. And what we oftentimes see is language is going to be tough for them. Like, it's going to be hard for them to say, like, I don't like that, or I'm not good at this. So you're going to start seeing physical kind of behavior. That doesn't mean that they're a problem child. That just means, okay, what are they trying to tell us? And how can we help them in the way that they're trying to communicate with us? Whether they're in special education or not, all students are going to have different behaviors. And so what can we do as educators to try to differentiate and find out what can we do to help and the behaviors that we need to extinguish, try to get rid of, and replace with positive behaviors.
Right.
And we go from there. And I think another thing for your parents that I always try to instill with my parents is whenever I'm working with a student, and when we're at the meeting and we're going over the results, the last thing that we as a team would ever want our parents to think is like, what did I not do? Or this is my fault, or somehow I had something to do with this, because it's no one's fault.
Right.
And honestly, when I'm talking to my parents, when I'm going over different learning disabilities, like, it wasn't anything you said, you gave them, you didn't give them. That's just the way their brain's wired. Like,
right.
That's it. And just because I have a learning disability, another thing that I really try to let my parents know is I'm not saying that your student can't learn. I'm saying the opposite. I'm saying that your student is going to learn in his or own different special way compared to another student that auditory processing. They don't need to hear the information a second or a third time. Okay, that's great. Then you just tell them once and they're off.
Right.
Student, we just need to repeat the information, make sure, we get their eye contact so we know that they're listening, and then we go from there. It's not the end of the world. They're just going to learn their own way, but they're still learning. And with any eligibility, the student is still going to learn. It's just our job to find what's the best way to teach them and the best way for them to learn.
Right. You know what? I love it. Love it. Love it. I hope you're loving it out there.
That's it. My job.
Need writing books. Yeah, and I think that it just is out there in the internet world. Just like such when you bring up IEP, it just feels like, or special education, so much contention. That is just like gonna be beef. And I am a firm believer in, even in our classroom, because that's where our relationship began. That there was we were just a team. Like, I could not have done I could not even be done the day if I did not have instructional aids.
Oh, absolutely.
So there was just no way that I could have taught at all if you guys weren't there. And so we had to have communication, and we luckily built a friendship and all the things. So it has to approach the IEP the same way, I feel like, or like you did with friends, although we are talking about your kiddo and it's a very legal document, but you have to think of, like your friend, like if I wasn't feeling well, then I'd be like, hey, I got to go to see Taylor's assembly. This is what's going to happen. Can you guys hold this down? This is what, you know what I'm saying? You have to be like, not be afraid to communicate with how you would like at work. If you had to have a meeting at work or with your friends, being able to ask them questions or just be honest and really keep the focus on the kid and know that they're not just a psychologist, the speech, these are people. And the more that they know about your kid, even if it's a struggle, or you as a family, be like, I really don't understand this, or we can't get to the meeting. That was a big deal. In one of the school districts I work with, I had no, you didn't have a clue. Oh, okay. You're thinking like, oh, they don't care. They really, there might be some other things. And there's other things, if you communicate that you can have other ways to have meetings, right? There's other ways to put the reports where you could in your language, in different languages. There's different ways, but if you don't reach out as a parent, I feel like that's your number one responsibility, is to reach out and to be honest with it, because that's how it's gonna best help.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, you being a teacher, you taught me this, and it's a good point. Like if the parents, if no one's really going to ask questions during some of these meetings, then the rest of us professionals, right, that did the assessments, that we know what we're talking about, just like you in the classroom with your students, if no one's asking a question, then we're going to assume there are no questions. We're going to assume, okay, you understand what's going on. You're on the same page. And so then I got to tell you, that's oftentimes the educators is when we'll get surprised when we hear like, oh no, that meeting that we just had, that everyone signed, everyone was in agreement. Well, now the parents are asking for an outside assessment because they want a second opinion. And it's just like, that's something that we could have talked about as a team, to be like, well, what did you not get? Like, what did we not do a good job in explaining?
Right.
And so it's just like you said, it's just that communication. Because at the end of the day, what everyone needs to realize is like no one's against anyone. Like it's literally called a team for a reason. And at the end of the day, we're just there to try to help out and see what we can do to make the student successful.
Right.
If we're communicate and really talk about it, then we're going to have a lot of bumps to cross,
right,
bumps to get over, and bridges to cross until we all get on that same page. And if we can just communicate, it'll be a lot easier.
Right. And then we were talking too about when we're talking about communication, I guess that's the theme.
Right.
Like preschool themes. The theme of communication is to like you brought up a good point. You're like, oh, you thought the meeting was fine. As an educator, like I presented my report, there was no questions because you wouldn't know what the questions would be. And then you find out like, what? They want an IEE?
Right.
They want an output report? What happened? Right. Or festering like for the whole year. So you walked out of that IEP. Then you didn't talk to anybody else in the team for the whole year, except for you talk to your friends, or you've got some information from the internet and they're like, oh no, you got this bad. And then you didn't talk to anyone on the team. You come to the next one and you're way past heated. Yeah. You're just mad. When you see Lorenzo, you're just rolling your eyes. You saw him at Starbucks and you're like, oh, that was
not talking to this guy
at my kid's IEP.
This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm done with him.
He just gave me all this information. So what we were saying is that you don't have to wait to the next year. You don't have to let it fester and bubble for a whole year.
Never wait. Never wait. And you also don't have to call a meeting for every single time you want to talk to a team member, the case carrier. You can, and that's another thing that the parents need to know. Parents, you're part of the team. You can call an IEP meeting whenever you want. You don't have to wait for the annual meetings. You don't have to wait for the 3-year review meetings. You don't have to wait for the school to call the meeting. You, as a team member, being a parent, can call an IEP meeting whenever you want. Whenever you want.
Right.
So that's definitely a good point to get out there. Don't wait. If you see something going on, don't wait for the school to say something, right? Because maybe the school doesn't see it, and that's why they haven't brought it up. So if you see it, if there's a change in medication, if there's a new diagnosis, if there's a change in the family dynamic, whatever the case is, and if you think it's something that the team needs to know, let us know.
Right.
Just let us know. Call a meeting if you think everybody on the team, if it's something that's really important, call a meeting and then we can talk about it. And we're probably going to make, depending what it is, we'll easily make changes to the IEP, whether it's changes to services.
Right.
Maybe the student's no longer able to complete certain goals, so we're going to have to rewrite goals. They're going to need more services. They don't need as many services. Right. Whatever the case is, we can make it happen, but you don't need to wait for us to call a meeting. You as a parent can call a meeting because you're also a team member.
Yes. And you can actually just communicate with the teacher directly.
That's right. You don't even have to call a meeting. You can just talk to the case carrier or whoever you think on the team needs to know this information. You can just communicate with that person instead of waiting for everybody to get on the same page to put it in their calendar. Or like a 10-minute meeting, like, no, you can just talk to one person directly and then they'll let the rest of the team know. Because that's the other thing. The case carrier does email everybody else on the team after every IEP meeting, annual, triennial meeting. That person lets everyone know what's going on. And so if the parent and that case carrier have a quick meeting, best believe I'm going to be getting an email about that meeting, even if it has nothing to do with me as a school psychologist. I'm going to know what they talked about. And that's something for me to make a note of whenever assessment comes along or the next time I do counseling with the student, whatever the case is. But the communication is very, very key for just a successful IEP in general.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know if you can hear my children in the background. Sorry about that.
I hear them.
They're virtual schooling, but they're over now and their cousins are over.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry. They'll get it afterwards for sure.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't play that.
No, not at all. Not at all.
There's nothing I can do. They're all taller than me now.
Yeah, that's true. I wouldn't be any help either. They're taller than me too. So I would just be there like, all right, never mind.
That doesn't work anymore.
No.
Well, is there anything that you would say to parents? Like, I know this on the spot, but I like to say 3 things. But if you 1, 2, or 3 things that you could say to a parent that's just nervous, like they're not used to communicating. It feels like from the things I've heard when I say, well, you could just email the teacher, or for me, I email the psychologist. It doesn't just have to be the teacher. It could be the person who had that report that could just have more information and more insight that's outside the meeting. How can parents best communicate? Like, what would be some best practices to have?
I think for me, personally speaking, as a school psych, it's best email to contact me, because 1, I have it in writing. So I can, take my time when I can have that time in between assessing students. I can read your concerns or your questions and I can write back to you. So for school psychs, I would say email works best when it comes to communication, and just don't be afraid to contact them and to ask questions. Because the other thing for a lot of parents to keep in mind is most school psychs have more than one school that they're at.
Right.
So depending on the size of the school, depending on the size,
you're not just my kids.
Right. You're at least at between 2 and 3 different schools where you're doing the assessments for all of those schools. So right now in my district, I have 2 elementary schools, and with both of those schools, my caseload, meaning the number of students who have active IEPs, and at any given time in the year, if they're due for any kind of assessments or they need my help with anything, I'm looking at probably maybe like 200 to 300 students on my caseload. And so we're busy, like we're moving around, we're at different sites.
Right.
And so, if you call us, leave a message, get back to you. We're not avoiding you. It's like, we have a lot of stuff going on. We have different sites. And so we do have a lot of responsibilities as well, but definitely do not ever feel afraid to contact or reach out. Don't think that you're being a burden or you're bugging or, your question doesn't make sense. Ask the question, because our job as a school psychologist is to make sure that we're explaining what we found when we worked with your son or daughter.
Right.
Our job, my testing, I'm explaining to you on that day where I assess your student, I'm explaining to you how your student learns based off of those results that I got. And so I would want you to ask me questions, because this is how your student is showing me that they can learn, and they're showing me what areas are difficult for them when it comes to learning, which is obviously the areas that we would focus on through an IEP.
Right.
There's going to be some kind of academic impact, and we want to make sure that we do what we can to prevent it, as well as help them grow in that area.
Right. I like that you said that, and I'm glad that you did, because it's about, I think, knowing everyone's roles. Like psychologists, like my eyes were even like, that's a lot. But think of the kids that I had on caseload just in my classroom. So, so when you're like, Lorenzo didn't email me back. I emailed him at 4:00, and here it is 4:30, and he's not talking. So I'm mad. Instead of, it's all about perspective and knowing what that, okay, he has 300 students. My student's not the only student. So let me give this, whatever, the professional amount of time to research. Then I think knowing those types of things, right? Because parents don't know that.
Yeah, exactly.
And know that.
And knowing your school psychologist schedule, right? So like Monday, Wednesday, Fridays, I'm at one of my elementary schools. And then Tuesday, Thursday, I'm at the other one. And so it's almost like, I'm turning it on and turning it off depending on the school. That doesn't mean that, I'm at my school on a Wednesday and my Tuesday, Thursday elementary emails me or calls me like, hey, we have a question. That doesn't mean I'm going to ignore them completely. No, of course, I'm still going to answer, but my focus is going to be on the school that I am currently at that day. And so, yeah, that's definitely something else to keep in mind. That,
so they're not mad. Like, I sent him an email and he didn't get back with me. He doesn't care. Now I'm mad. No. That puts into perspective. Be like, okay, I'm sending this, but I know that he has 300. Of course, it is a priority. That's your job. We're not saying that the email should be ignored, parents. We're not saying that. We're just saying it puts it into perspective that a school psych might have a caseload of 300.
Yeah, and they're going to have a big caseload.
They don't just do one IEP and then go and then check emails all day. They're working with students, and there's other things that go into being a school psychologist. And I think that's a part of when I'm thinking about. Oh, sorry, I don't know what I hit. When I'm thinking about communicating with people, I think about those types of things. It's kind of like going to a fancy restaurant, ordering something that's going to take more. Like if I want the lava cake, I can get the cheesecake right now, but if I want the lava cake, it's going to take time. I'm not going to be mad at the cook in the back when I order the lava cake. Like I ordered the lava cake and they got their cheesecake. The lava cake's going to it takes more time. You just know more about it. So then you're like, you can enjoy some water.
Exactly. And I mean, and parents don't think that, depending on, again, it always depends on the school and the school district, right? Mm-hmm. And it also depends on the level, because you will have some school districts where they will have one school psychologist at each school site. It's very rare, but you will have that. Mm-hmm. Now, once you get into the high schools, because of their size and how big they are, they usually will have one school psychologist on campus. And so then they are strictly there just for that school. They don't leave. They don't go anywhere. Monday through Friday, they're at that school. And so that is a good time, right, to continue to keep that communication open, like Markeisha was saying, and don't wait to talk to them until your student has to be assessed or until there's an IEP meeting. Like, we're people. And it's a very solitary job, meaning like we're oftentimes we're alone. We call in students, we're testing them, and when we're not testing them, we're writing our 30, 40 page reports. Then we go to meetings to explain it, and then we do it all over again. So oftentimes we're going to have a lot to say. Like, we're going to want to actually take a break and talk to people and have that interaction, because again, we're passionate about it and we like what we do and we understand what we do. So me personally, I love taking the time to talk to my parents and explain to them what these results mean and what can we do to help their student, both at home and at school.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I like that you said that. I know that they're lucky to have you. My son's seeing an awesome psychologist too, because I did not understand some of those things for sure. I mean, it's a lot, and that's why you went to school for it, to be able to explain to him. So I've hogged up so much of your time. I know your little puppy is probably.
I enjoy this. I enjoy this. I'm ready for a part 2. We'll do a part 2.
We're gonna have you back, and maybe we'll talk about some of our fun times with some of our old students. I was thinking about having a party. Maybe we could get some of the old students and we could all be in little Zoom boxes.
That would be fun. I would really like to see how grown up they are. That would be awesome.
That would be fun.
Yes, it would.
Well, I'm gonna sign off, and unless you have anything else to say.
That's it. Thank you so much for having me. This was a great experience, and I definitely look forward to the next one.
And then all the parents, if they have any questions.
They can contact me. I can give them my.
Then you'll have a load of plus 300.
Can you see it on? I'm gonna put it in the chat, so let me know if you can see it.
I don't see anything in the chat yet.
What's that? No, I haven't said that yet. Does that show up?
Yes, it does.
You can do that one, or this is the one that I frequently check. So that's my that's my personal one, my work one, my personal one.
Okay.
So I'm available at either one. Yeah. If anyone has any basic questions, concerns, they don't understand something that's in the report, I'd have no problem just doing my best to explain it. We usually all do the same thing for the most part. All school psychs, we have the same kind of assessments that are available to us. And so the language is pretty much the same, regardless of what test you're using. We're going to look at it. We're going to understand it. So if there's ever any questions, definitely email. Like I said before, email is the best way for me.
That's super nice, though.
Yeah.
We want you guys to reach out to your kid psychologist, though, also, because
absolutely, that's number one. Reach out to
you have a high bar, set the bar so high now, but now they're like, you know what? I can, maybe they feel more comfortable to reach out to their psychologist and say, hey, what does this really mean? And what does this look like for my kid?
Right. And that's what they should be doing. Definitely do that. Do not be afraid to talk to your school psychologist, because that's their job. We're supposed to answer these questions, and we're supposed to make it understandable.
Yay. Well, yay for all the kids on your caseload. And now all of the listeners that are going to have access to you.
Right.
You have a side gig. So, all right. So since we couldn't see we're going to do this in person so we can do glitter. I had a glitter to do that. I wanted to,
sprinkle it everywhere. And then I'm going to sit there trying to peel it off. I'm going to wash my hands. I'm going to shower. And I'm still
You're going to come back the next day. It's going to be glitter in your brows.
Oh, it's going to be unbelievable. I can't wait.
Hoping that you have girls that love glitter. That's going to be interesting.
That will be the definition of full circle. My life will be full circle. When I have kids, and if they're girls and they love glitter, that's I will go back to our times in the classroom together. Right. This is exactly what
like a craft apron, so that you can a few things.
If that happens, I'm going to Lakeshore and I'm just buying all the craft aprons and equipment that I can find, and I'll be set.
I don't know, but I could just see girls and glitter in your future.
Oh boy. Yeah, probably. I would
I would have all girls, right? Because you know how I feel about glitter. Everything is glitter. Yeah. And I have 3 boys, and then my daughter plays sports. She doesn't like any glitter. She don't like pink. None of that is none of her. So it's always you put it out there that you don't like it, so it's gonna come back to you.
And now it's gonna come back to me. I love glitter. I love glitter.
Yeah. You better start. Too late now.
Start saying that now.
It's too late. All right, Zoe. Thank you so much. I'll call you so much. Too.
Absolutely. Keep it posted.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you again for taking your time to listen. Go ahead and hit subscribe and leave a 5-star review. I appreciate it. See you next time.